We've been talking about it for weeks. Camping. Well, my daughter had, I should say. Personally, I was kind of on the fence. I'm not really an outdoorsy kind of guy, to put it mildly. If you'd asked if I'd ever pitched the tent, I'd probably just slap my thigh and giggle uncontrollably. Moving into a new house is a strenuous task in and of itself. But add starting a new job, a new life into the mix, and you end up with one adult who doesn't know how to calm down, relax, or spend time with his daughter. So, that's where the camping idea originated. I promised her we'd go once we'd settled in, and she made damn sure to hold me to it, reminding me of it at least 5 times daily. Melissa was a hurricane, always up to something. Some would call her a handful, but that would be nothing short of a gross understatement. But she was also sweet, dedicated, focused, and extremely imaginative. That's why it was so easy to sometimes forget I was the adult. She would mostly just take care of and entertain herself. But camping definitely required at least one adult. That's what I read somewhere anyway. And I was planning to go through with it, I swear. But alas, I can't control the weather. It started already Thursday afternoon. Pouring rain and strong winds. She, were planning on heading out Saturday morning. But when we woke up, it had gotten even worse. Now, I'm no weatherman, but the weatherman on the local news is. Thus, I was inclined to believe him when he claimed we were dealing with a storm. Melissa was devastated, of course. She'd been really looking forward to it, picking out possible locations for our campsite, reading up on the flora and fauna of the area, learning what animals we might encounter. When I told her there was no way we could go camping in a storm, she broke down crying. I don't think she was mad at me, but it still broke my heart. So, that's when I proposed that we could set up camp right here in our living room. At first, she found the idea stupid. How could that be any fun? No animals, no fishing, no searching for remedial herbs, nothing. But she slowly came round to the idea. We could turn off all the lights, sleep in the tent, read scary stories, pig out on junk food. We could pretend we were lost campers in a storm, and that something terrible lurked just outside our tents. So we pitched the tent, right there between the couch and the TV, laid out the sleeping bags, emptied the cabinets and the cupboards for all things sweet, killed the lights, and crawled into our cozy little campsite universe. She brought a favourite book, Little Pumpkin and Cold Bones by Man and Lysette, while I was quite looking forward to reading this weird little book I'd found under a loose floorboard in the attic, The Electric Boner by some guy named Nathaniel Lewis. The pages were oddly sticky, but what can you do? We snuggled up in our sleeping bags and had a great time, listening to the creepy creaking of the old house, the ghostly, banshee-like sounds of the wind, eating snacks, and telling each other scary stories. Hers scared the hell out of me, let me tell you. She read to me from a book, and I read to her from my book. Not a good idea. And it was just wonderful. She fell asleep pretty late, face down in a book and popcorn. I guess I followed soon after. I think it was the cold that woke me up. That was the first thing I remember anyway. Freezing cold. Way below zero, crippling cold. I was shivering and chopping my teeth uncontrollably. The sleeping bag barely warm enough to keep me from going hypothermic. What the hell was going on? It was dark. Way too dark. Sure, we'd switched off almost all of the lights, but I was sure I left at least a few of them on. Had the power gone out? Given the intensity of the storm, it was entirely possible. But it still didn't explain the cold. I sat up clumsily, still constrained by a rather tight-fitting sleeping bag. There was something off, something I couldn't explain. "Melissa?" I whispered. No answer. "Melissa?" I said, slightly louder. "Are you there? Wake up!" I got my arm free and blindly felt around the tent. Nothing. Not even her sleeping bag. Maybe she was uncomfortable, couldn't sleep, and decided to go to her bed. Maybe she just had to use the toilet and took the sleeping bag with her for warmth. I guess both made sense, but I still couldn't shake that strange feeling. The feeling that told me I wasn't in my house anymore. I fumbled to find the zipper. My fingers were completely numb from the cold, and I had to pause every once in a while to breathe some warmth back into them. When I finally found it, without thinking, I just yanked it open, not considering what I might face on the other side. Snow. No wonder it was so dark. The tent was completely covered in snow. I managed to crawl out awkwardly, a groaning sense of dread slowly revealing itself as I realized just how far from the house I had to be. I stumbled to my feet, looking around at my newfound location dumbfoundedly. It was amazing, unreal, and absolutely terrifying. It was dark, but not too dark. Dusky or dim, I guess. But the full moon in the clear sky above illuminated just about everything. I was standing in what appeared to be a deep ravine, and the steep, jagged rock walls stretching impossibly into the air on either side. The ground was covered in about 2 feet of snow, and I could see the slope curving even deeper ahead. But what really caught my eye, the thing that instantly sent adrenaline pumping through my system, was the footprints in the snow. They were leading further down the slope. 2 distinct sets of footprints. One were boot prints, obviously adult, a male, probably judging by the size. The other, a naked footprints of a child. Melissa. It had to be her. Without thinking, I immediately sprung to action and halfway ran, halfway stumbled through the snow, calling out her name in shrieks of utter panic. "Melissa! Melissa!" The only thing I could hear was my own echoing voice. I kept going, the cold not bothering me as much, probably because of the previously mentioned adrenaline, but I knew deep down I wouldn't last long in these temperatures. I followed the footprints for about 5 minutes when I spotted blood. Just tiny droplets in the snow to begin with, but growing in both size and frequency the further I went. She was hurt. The sick asshole that was chasing her had hurt her. I felt a kind of mixture between horror and fear and rage that completely possessed me, and driven by this terrible emotion, I set aside all pain and exhaustion, running at speeds I've yet to match. And then I found them. It was sort of a circular chamber, the end of the slope. The moonlight hit them just right, and it felt like I was watching everything unfold in some crazy hallucination. She didn't wear any clothes. She was completely stark, and her pale skin appeared almost blue. She had her back turned to me, her flowing hair reaching down to her waist. "Melissa!" I yelled. The girl turned around slowly. She was bathed in blood, head to foot, and in her cold, blue eyes, I saw something disturbingly primal, something dark and animalistic, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. That wasn't Melissa. She sniffed the air, like she was trying to ascertain if I was a threat or not, before bending down to the mangled corpse before her. What happened next, I still have problems describing. It was like watching a clan of hyenas rip their prey to pieces, except in this case, the hyenas was just a tiny, fair-haired girl. I couldn't move. I didn't want to move. I think maybe I was afraid she'd react to any sudden movement, afraid she'd chase me down and kill me like she did that man. After about 10 minutes of watching her completely shred the corpse to tiny chunks, she took a long, deep breath of the freezing cold air and turned back to face me. "Have you seen Miss Piggy?" she asked. "The bad man scared her." The voice was so normal. Exactly what you'd expect from a little girl. But it still struck fear in my heart. Terrible, agonizing dread. No, I mumbled. "No, I haven't seen Miss Piggy." She stared at me for quite a while, her thin arms sort of waving hypnotically at her side. Every once in a while, she broke out snarling, like an agitated dog, almost as if she wasn't fond of her own thoughts. "You better go then," she eventually said. "Go back home." I stood there, shivering, suddenly realizing again just how cold it really was. The girl didn't seem to mind the sub-zero temperature at all. She just kept pacing around what was left of the corpse, occasionally erupting in wild, bestial snarls. "Go!" she suddenly shrieked. "Go before I change my mind!" I turned on a dime and ran back the way I came. I didn't stop. Didn't even slow down to catch brief glances behind me. I just knew that I had to do what she said. If I didn't, she'd slaughter me without breaking a sweat. I arrived at the tent, wheezing, completely famished, exhausted, dehydrated, and dangerously hypothermic, all mixed into one big bag of things that could kill me. What now, was all I could think. What on earth should I do now? It was only when I heard the rapidly increasing sounds of naked feet in the snow that I dove back into the tent, feverishly closing the zipper behind me. I don't know how long I stayed there. Hours, days, probably not days. But at some point, I just lost consciousness, fainted, everything turned black. I woke up in my living room. Well, in a tent erected in my living room at the very least. This is the part you loathe. The part some of you were expecting. The part where I tell you it was all a dream. Well, that's what I tried to tell myself anyway. Just some freakishly vivid dream. So vivid, in fact, that I woke up with frostbite on my hands and feet. Melissa was sound asleep next to me, and I thanked all the gods I can remember the name of. At least she didn't get dragged into this terrifying nightmare. As I sat there, tending to my wounds, she slowly came to and sat up next to me. She gave me a long hug. "You right, kiddo?" I asked. "Yeah, Daddy. I just wanted to thank you." "Thank me for what?" I said, slightly perplexed. "For the camping trip, of course. It was wonderful." I smiled. It had been pretty great. Well, except for that very vivid nightmare. But I was alive, and my daughter was happy. What more can a man ask for? Guess what? She said playfully. What? I smiled. I got to ride her. She smiled gleefully. What? Who? I asked, puzzled. Miss Piggy, of course. The girl thanked me for finding her, and she let me ride her. I'm never going camping in my living room again.